Welcome, Martin Motnik from the band Accept. How are you today?
I'm very good.
Fantastic.
Greetings from Berlin.
Fantastic. And also welcome to the series of interviews presented by Rockhouse Magazine.
Thank you.
I'm really interested in what we're doing in Accept, but if you don't mind, I'd like to roll the clock back to your early life.
Okay. How early?
Well, mate, I'm interested. You picked up the guitar at the age of 8. What inspired you to pick up the guitar at such a young, early age?
I honestly don't know. It was just an urge that I had for a while, and I actually had to nag my parents for a while too, until they finally bought me one. But it was just
Fantastic.
something that there's one picture of my 4th birthday where I'm holding like a plastic guitar,
Nice.
and that, I don't know, maybe just holding it kind of like is what triggered it. And then after that, it was just something I wanted to do. And then uh, one day my dad took me to a music store and bought a acoustic guitar, and then that was that spark. But I didn't really take it as seriously until my brother, who's 6 years older than me, who often
Okay.
like wanted to play the guitar as well, so we fought over it. And then when I was 13, he brought home a bass guitar. I guess his
Right.
plan was he wanted to start some sort of a family band, and he wanted to groom me to become the bass player. And yeah, so that worked out because ever since then, that was just like when I was really hooked.
Yeah, fantastic. So, yeah, you did pick up the bass. Were there any early influences in your life which made you think, yeah, this bass guitar's for me, other than your brother saying, hey, this is your role in the family band? What other influences were there?
There was just around the time when David Lee Roth came out with his first solo album, Eat 'Em and Smile, and
Yeah.
Billy Sheehan, who I had known until then, he was the bass player, and I just listened to it, and I was like, this is amazing. I want to learn how to play like that, and that's basically the first album that I really studied. Of course, I was far away from being able to play that, but it was just something that really inspired me and grabbed me. And none other bass players, the Who, for instance, John Entwistle, sorry, Steve Harris, Iron Maiden, Geddy Lee from Rush.
Yeah.
Those were all like very influential because they were all very, very virtuoso and skilled bass players. That's who inspired me.
Fantastic. Yeah, I must admit, Billy Sheehan's role in that David Lee Roth album was just absolutely amazing. And he played more the role of a lead guitarist on that album. Big competition in that band at the time, but certainly his bass guitaring with Greg Bissonette on drums was just fantastic to listen to. So great.
Right, and then Steve Vai, just the two of them just ripping it. It was incredible.
An incredible band indeed. Mate, following picking up that bass and really learning your craft there, you then joined the band The Winners, who were well known for their single "Go for Gold." Yeah, I've done my research, Martin.
You remember?
I've seen some good clips on YouTube, mate, of the "Go for Gold" single. But interestingly, "Go for Gold" has a special meaning in German Olympic history. Can you talk to me about that a little bit more?
Yeah, so there was the Summer Olympics 1988 in Seoul in South Korea, and it was like around that time every big sporting event also kind of like triggered to have a like a theme song for the German team or whoever represented the band the country. And so that was kind of like the theme song for the German delegation. So basically just go for the gold medal. And I was a producer, Thomas Hain, who kind of put that band together. And I actually was not part of that band. I became a part of it a little bit later,
Okay.
when we kind of switched over to producing music for TV shows. And so we had this theme song for a show that was kind of like it was kind of like a little bit like a soap opera, but it was about like a clinic that they built in on a tropical island. And that was also my first trip, that like big trip that took me out of the country. Filmed some music videos on the Philippines. So that was like a big deal for me, because like, oh man, this is awesome. I'm playing music and I'm getting paid and they're taking me on this fancy vacation. This is awesome. It's like,
That's a
I
great.
can do this.
And here we are today, still doing it, mate. The Philippines would have been amazing back in those days as well as one of your
Oh, it was
first
awesome.
jobs. Yeah, good. In 2005, you took the big step and decided to move to the US, where you played alongside some classic names in rock, including Billy John Roth, Chris Slade. You met Greg Bissonette over there. But interestingly, you toured with Ray Parker Jr. as well. A lot of people outside of the metal community wouldn't know who Ray Parker Jr. is. What's your favorite moment with Ray?
Well, of course, playing Ghostbusters. And so the story was, I was hired to play with a very talented keyboard player, and Illinois Academia is her name, and she was Ray Parker Jr.'s keyboard player, and so she released her solo album, and so that was a CD release party that we did in Los Angeles, and I was somehow I got recommended. I think it was Matt Bissonette who actually recommended me, because I made a solo album with Greg Bissonette on drums, and Matt was Greg's recording engineer. So we did it all virtually. He sent me the drum tracks online. And then shortly after, I told him that I'm gonna give it a shot, come to LA and see how things are gonna work out. And both of them, Greg and Matt, were like really nice, and they recommended me for gigs. And that was one of them. And so we had this showcase for Eleanor's solo album, and then Ray Parker Jr. was a part of it. And then so we started playing Ghostbusters, and it's just amazing what most people don't know that, but he's like mostly famous for that song.
Yeah.
But he's one of the most recorded studio guitar players. He's a fantastic musician, and he's played on tons of albums. So it's almost, I don't want to say underrated, but he's not well enough known for his actual other qualities that he's been that he can do, what he's done.
Must admit, I know that as well. I just know Ray from Ghostbusters fame, so I will take it upon myself to go have a look at some of his other stuff as well.
Yeah, totally. You should look up his discography, and it's impressive.
Yeah, that's good. So in 2005, you also recorded your debut solo album, Bass Invader, with Greg Bissonette, and it was probably an album outside of the mold, because it was only yourself and Greg on drums playing for the entirety of the album, other than two tracks where you were joined by a guitarist. How well was that album received? I've actually become a massive fan of Bass Invader, and looking forward to your advice on pick it up on vinyl. But yeah, that's outside of the box thinking, just yourself and Greg playing the album. What was the thinking behind that?
I kind of wanted to do some sort of well, thank you, first of all. And it was kind of like an audible business card. That's kind of like what I wanted to do with it. It was more like, let's show people. At that time I was living in Munich, and I was trying to break into the studio scene somehow. That's like my big thing that I wanted to do. Always wanted to do, is like studio recordings. And so I was like, how can I gain notoriety? And so I thought, oh, maybe if I make an album where I show people what I can play, then maybe that's gonna lead to some work. And that's how I came up with the idea. It's like, you know what? Let me just play everything on bass guitars, and that sure will show people all I can do, and they'll hire me. And then first, I just wanted to record the drums myself, basically program the drums myself. And then I was browsing the internet, and then somehow I came across Greg's website, and he said, hire Greg for UCD. I'm like, oh my God. And of course, from back then, when I was such a big fan of David Lee Roth albums where he was the drummer on, I'm like, that'd be a dream come true. Like playing with that guy and playing with the same drummer as Billy Sheehan, my big influence. It's like, you know what, let me reach out. He's never going to reply anyway, but hey, why not? And like a couple of days later, I got a reply and say, "Hey, Martin, would love to do it, and those are my conditions, and this is how we got to do it. It's gonna sound awesome." I'm like, "Great, let's do it." And
That
that's
would have
how
been
that came about. And that was just all done online, which also at that time was like not as much the norm as it is today.
absolutely not. So you
And
actually never met Greg up at this point. The whole
up
album was
until
done
that
online.
point, not yet. No, it was all via email, and then at some point he called me, and we chatted. But yeah, it was all done remotely. I prepared everything basically. I recorded all my parts as they were gonna be, and then I programmed drums so to give him an idea of what the style of the song's gonna be. But I said, just play it as like this was your album. Put your own fingerprints on it and just play as you feel. And he really did, and it was awesome. And so the effect of it was not as I had hoped, because what happened was people were like listening and saying, "Oh, this is great, but you play too much. If we need a bass player, we need someone who goes doom 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 doom." And so I think they were automatically turned off because this guy's gonna overplay. Let's not hire him. So I didn't really get much more studio work, but it helped me in other regards. That like in the bass players community, it was actually really well received, and I did get quite a few really positive reviews on magazines and websites and stuff. And but then where it helped me was right after I moved to the United States, or I was kind of like still in the process of moving. A friend of mine who had a big bass player magazine in Germany, he had done a review about it. But then he was also the bass player for Uli John Roth, former guitar player of the Scorpions, in Germany. And then when Uli was going to tour the United States, he's like, "I need a bass player." And then Lars Lehmann, that's his name, he said, "I know a guy. He'd be great. He's in LA. I know he can play." And so that's how I got in touch with Uli, and he said, "Hey, I can use you." And that's how that came about.
Yeah.
And then from there, Uli was just so instrumental in my whole basically getting started in the United States, because that's how I got my first artist visa, so I could actually be there officially, because up until then I was basically just a tourist, so I couldn't really work, and I was basically just getting my toes wet and see if I could like even last over there, because I was like, yeah, of course LA is just gonna wait for another bass player. But there was luck, and going to jam sessions, meeting good people, but then that helped me a lot, so that I was actually able to then officially really dive into, okay, I'm here now, I'm legal, I can fully work.
Yeah. The solo album, the 2005 solo album, certainly did lead to a lot of things. So after touring with Uli, you actually changed direction somewhat in 2007 and joined one of the pioneering German industrial bands in Icebreaker for a few years. What was it like in that change of direction, going from the classic rock style to industrial metal?
Well, on one side, of course, opportunity a little bit, because I mean, as need to be, if you want to do it as a living, you have to be open-minded, and then you kind of, I mean, I've done other stuff too that I'm like, I wouldn't necessarily put on my resume on top. It's nothing that I'm ashamed of, but like I did some TV shows with what we call Schlager here, which is kind of like music that my parents listened to, so to speak. And
I'm sure my
played a lot of, probably too, and or this is nothing that I listen to personally. Or I played a lot of churches, and it's so you just have to be like open-minded, and if you want to do it for a living, you need to be flexible. And Definitely. So when Icebreaker offered me, it was, of course, like a big step up in my career. So it's like, I'd be stupid not to do it. But on the other side, I really liked the music, especially performing it. It's really energetic. It's kind of like, it's very comparable. I would say it's comparable to Rammstein. It's not, the show is not as elaborate and not as many flamethrowers, but the musical style, when you listen to it, is also really hard German lyrics, and the whole production is very on point and aggressive, but like playing it is just, it's just a lot of fun. And so I was honored when they asked me, and I jumped on it in a heartbeat. I loved being with them, and I kind of like left them when I was like really established in the United States, but we're still friends. And actually, funny enough, tomorrow we're playing a festival here. So Accept's playing a festival tomorrow here in it's like 2 hours outside of Berlin, and Eisbrecher is one of the other bands. So really looking forward to seeing all of the guys again and hanging and having a good time.
Yeah, no, that's good. I just want to pick up on one of your points. To really make it in this industry, you have to diversify and play a range of different styles of music. You run a lot of bass clinics. Is that probably the best advice you can give to aspiring musicians or even aspiring bass players? Diversify your style.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a couple of I actually tried to started to write down a little bit what I feel like is important to be actually a working musician. And playing, of course, is an important part. So you need to know your parts. And but there's a big social component when you play music, to get hired and to get hired back. Which, I mean, making music, unless you're like a complete solo musician, is about interacting with other people. And so being reliable, being flexible, being on time, knowing your stuff, being prepared, having working gear. It doesn't have to be the most expensive stuff, but it has to work.
Sure.
And then knowing the stuff. But I think it helped me to work as much as I did to play different styles. So I played a lot in cover bands in Germany, and then later, especially when I moved to Vegas. Then afterwards, after I was been in LA for a while, and so I'd play basically almost any style. And I think that helps a lot if you're open-minded. And then also, if you listen to a lot of different styles of music, you might not necessarily be a fan of it, but there's always something you can learn. And then especially if you are interested in writing songs, then that's also going to definitely inspire you. And you can move influences from one style to another, and then basically create something new.
It's fantastic. Your career took another step forward in 2014, and this one is one which has a very strong connection to Australia. You joined the Carnival Cruise Line with regular trips to Australia, but you also become a music director on the cruise line. Is that right?
That's right. It was a couple of years after that. So my very first cruise experience was out of Sydney, Australia, and so I was down there for about, I think, 4.5 months, until we then moved the ship back for the summer season in the northern hemisphere, back to the United States. But I basically spent Christmas in the summertime for the first time, so that was interesting. And but yeah, I really love that. It's like Australia was definitely very high on my bucket list to see. So when the offer came in, I couldn't really reject it, and it was fantastic. So we flew down there mid-December 2014, and and then we did like 10-day cruises out of Sydney, and then to such boring places as Bora Bora and Tahiti and Fiji.
Terrible. So, I feel sorry having to do that.
Right. It was a grind. And then I met a lot of horrible Australian people who made me drink a lot.
No, that's not possible.
So my favorite beer is 2 years old.
2 years old.
That became my favorite beer. And and I appreciated the term bogan.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. So no, I had a total blast. I also had a fantastic band, and of the guys, some of the guys I'm still really close friends with. There's one guitar player actually in particular who is in Nashville now as well. I play with him a lot, and we work a lot together. So a lot of great things came out of that, and that was a really interesting experience. So first I was hired as a show band musician, and then I did it for a total of 4 years actually. And after about 2 years, they offered me to become music director, which basically means and you become the band leader. You're responsible for the band, to learn the songs, to first pick the material, distribute the material to your musicians. And it's a very diversified band, usually very often from different countries. So like this one time we had at that time I was still only German citizen. I got both now, but also United States and Germany. But yeah, we got a guitar player from the United States. We had a singer from Sweden. We had a drummer from Great Britain, and a keyboard player from the Philippines. So wow. this rainbow coalition of musicians, and then you get together and you rehearse for a month in Florida, and then they put you on a ship, and then you play basically 6 times a week. And if you have a good band, it's just amazing, because you just play every night and you get tighter and tighter and tighter, because you play like for 6 months, and at the end you basically understand each other like without words, and it's a great experience.
You would definitely be so tired after that 6 months playing with each other for that amount of time. It must have been an amazing experience.
No, and it was really great.
And drinking the 2 years old as well. Heineken is my preferred choice. So.
Oh, okay. Now we have that here a lot in Europe now.
Oh, that's good. That's good. From that role, you then got the opportunity to play in Accept's Symphonic Terror Orchestra tour. That would have been an amazing experience as well, playing in front of a huge orchestra like that with such a legendary band in Accept. How was that experience when it first started?
That was mind blowing, because I didn't expect that. I was kind of like done with the ships. I knew that, and a really good friend of mine lives in the Nashville area, and he recommended to me, because I had tried LA, I had tried Vegas, and there was a big draw from all these cities, even New York, of people moving to Nashville. And so he said, why don't you give it a try? It's like, it's called Music City. Everybody is there. You should be there. I'm like, okay, why not? So it was like late 2018. I moved in the Nashville area. And then at some point, a good friend of mine gave me a call and said, hey, have you heard the news? Peter Baltus just quit the band. Like, Peter Baltus from Accept? And he said, yeah, man. And they're out there in Nashville. I'm like, Accept's in Nashville? What? Because I had no idea. Because for me, Accept has, of course, been a major.
Massive.
Okay.
Thanks, Peter. We just lost you temporarily, but glad that you're back.
Technology. So, I mean, you are on the basically exactly the opposite side of the globe right now as I am. So if I'm up here, you're here.
There somewhere, mate. But it just goes to show how reliant we are on technology these days. It's
of course, but the fact that we can even do this, I still find that very, very impressive.
It's amazing, isn't it? Anyway, so we're talking about you finding out that there's a vacancy in Accept.
Right. So my friend tells me, like, you'd be perfect. I'm like, yeah, of course. They're waiting for me, because I knew this kind of be inquiries from all over the world, but people kind of try to get an audition or even maybe they have someone lined up already. But I was like, what do I have to lose? Let me shoot my shot. So I went on their website, looked for an email address, and then I sent them an email in German saying, well, I'm really sorry to hear that Peter has decided to leave the band. I don't know what you guys' plans are, but if you want to continue, I'd love the opportunity to audition. And then I gave him a little rundown of my resume, and then I said that that I played with Uli John Roth, and I'm local now, and in Nashville, because yeah, that's when I found out that they were actually in Nashville. I can travel. I'm free. I have no criminal records. I have 2 passports and all this stuff. And then I didn't hear back for a while. I completely forgot about it. It's like, of course, I started working my way into like the cover band scene in Nashville, because a very lively covers of like a music scene in downtown Nashville. It's called Lower Broadway, and there's like a stretch of 3 or 4 blocks, and it's just one bar next to each other, and it's just full of live music 7 days a week. So there's a lot of opportunity for musicians to work there. So I started working there and start playing my first gigs. And then all of a sudden I get an email from Wolf Hoffman saying, hey, are you available to chat tomorrow? Because it's in the middle of the night. And I was, of course, call me anytime. So the next day he calls me and he goes, well, yeah, so how are things? And I'm like, well, I'm good, just getting the hang here and work my way into Nashville and stuff. And he goes, yeah, okay, well, want to come by and jam? Because I know you can play. He's seen my videos and stuff. So it's like, the musical side is not a problem. It's like, how do we get along? And I was like, yeah, absolutely, makes total sense. So the next day I drove over there. It's like 20 minutes away from where I was staying. And he said, that we'll know in 5 minutes if we get along or not. And so we ended up jamming for over 2 hours.
Wow.
And so, of course, I reviewed Balls, because I had covered that in the 90s in a band, and Metal Heart. And so I had a little bit of material prepared. And then he asked me what I was working on right now. So I said, well, I'm working on the song by Extreme, so Cupid's Dead. And that's just a song that I had just worked on, and I had made a little YouTube video. And I was like, this is a little bit of a complicated riff that I'm playing, blah, blah, blah. And he picked it up like that, because he's a monster. And so we just had a good time. And then he said, well, yeah, that sounds good. Well, let me send you some songs to actually really prepare them. And then next time, let's bring the drummer in, Christopher Williams, and then we can really jam and see how it goes. And then, of course, like the next week, I didn't do anything but prepare these songs. So how to play them, and the good thing was he gave me basically a multi-track recording, because he records every show every night as a multi-track recording. So you can also go back and listen back, and if there's anything that needs to get fixed, you can really like zoom in and review it. And so I had the individual bass tracks, I had Peter's vocals, and I could really learn exactly how it was supposed to sound. And yeah, so a week later, we got back together, and I basically played it note for note, and yeah, they were pleased. And Christopher's a great guy too, so we got along right away. And because I'm a big, obviously, as you can tell, I'm a big fan of great drummers, like with Greg Bissonette, and then through my studio work and my website studiobassist.com, I got hired for other jobs, and so I had played with Kenny Aronoff, Chad Wackerman from Frank Zappa's band back then. Bunch of more songs with Greg, Marco Minnemann, who's with the Aristocrats, fantastic German drummer. And so Christopher's just in the same league, and so it's so easy to play with him, because he's just such a clockwork.
Yeah.
And yeah, so after that they were like, oh, let's talk to the rest of the band. So, but then just basically only a couple of days later, he said, so do you want to do it? You got the job. And I was like, let me think. Okay.
Okay.
and then of course, like, I played it cool, and I hung up, and then I just jumped around and at my place, just being ecstatic, because I mean that's a dream gig. I mean, this is what you dream when you are a kid picking up a guitar. So one day I'll be a rock star. And
amazing experience. And it led to the recording of the latest album, Too Mean to Die.
Right.
And the band must have embraced you because you've got songwriting credits on nearly half of the songs.
Yeah, which was amazing because I didn't know how it's going to go. I was like hoping I was going to play the bass on it.
Yeah.
And then at some point Wolf told me, hey, if you have any ideas, just throw them my way. I'll listen to them. I was like, okay, sure. So I sat down, wrote a few songs, of course, submitted a couple that I thought were worthy. And then, Wolf liked a couple of the ideas. And then, but then it even got into like writing lyrics. Because what a lot of people didn't know for the longest time is that actually Wolf's wife Gabby, who was the brains and the spine of basically, except for 40 years, she was the manager, but she also wrote most of the lyrics. So like Balls to the Wall and stuff. She wrote those, and Gabby and I also get along great, and then so we exchanged ideas for lyrics, and then kind of like got into that area. And then but then Mark, of course, being the singer, Mark Tanillo, being a native American, he's from New Jersey, he would then take the lyrics and then kind of change my school English into like actual like native American English, so to speak, and slang, and make it sometimes a little bit less contrived, maybe, I don't know. So it's a really great teamwork. And also if I presented ideas for songs or like musical ideas, Wolf, then of course I have a little solo section in there or something, but then okay, Wolf changes it completely. But it's a really, really nice teamwork how the songs developed. And then I'm very honored. I was absolutely flattered that I was invited, and then actually even got some songs on there.
The album itself is strong. Zombie Apocalypse kicks it off. Undertaker, personal favorite, but your own songs, No One's Master, Sucks to Be You, the best. It is a classic Accept album. But 2021 was a massive year for you. You released your second solo album, and the guest list on there, Joe Satriani, Wolf is on there, Bruce Kulick, Greg Bissonet's on there as well. Another really strong, solid solo album there. What's the thinking behind that?
No, thank you. Well, it was a collection of songs that I had started to write. I knew that at some point I wanted to write another or release another solo album after Bass Invader, but then that just wasn't the time. I mean, if you're busy basically doing the day-to-day work and just keep the money coming in, to set enough time aside to like be creative and then record it on it. These days, I think most of musicians who make solo albums do most of the work themselves. And that's kind of like how my work was as well. I was the recording engineer, at least for my parts, and then arrange it. And then only later was when I had the help of my brother, Frank. He's a sound engineer in Frankfurt. Funny coincidence. But he is responsible for mixing and mastering it. But up until that point, I did it all myself. So the thought process was, okay, I want to do another album, and then COVID hit, and I was like, okay, well, got nothing else going on right now. That'd be the right time to do something like that. But then it also, as bad as COVID was for everybody, but on the artist world, for not being able to tour, on the other side, it meant that basically everybody was at home. And that's when my idea came, hey, let me reach out to some of my musical heroes and see if they would participate. And that was the one good thing that came out of all of us being cooped up at home, so to speak, that they were available and willing to help. And that's how I got this. Yeah, it's a dream come true. And that's why I called it Dream Chaser at the end, because I was like, you know what? that was like really, those were the people I always wanted to play with. And the fact that I got them to agree is a real dream come true.
It's just a beautiful album, a diverse range of styles on there.
Thank you.
It's available on all streaming platforms, but also I believe it's still available on vinyl. Is that right?
It's in the process right now. It's because everybody's making vinyl records these days, and there's only a few factories left. They're all clogged up for like almost a year. So I got the test pressings recently, so they sound great, and now we're just waiting for production to finish. But I'm on tour right now anyway until the end of August. So I hope by the time I'm back in Nashville, beginning of September, I can go pick them up and then hopefully release them to the world.
Perfect. I look forward to it. Martin, I know you're a busy man. I think our time is up. So on behalf of Rockhouse Mag, I really appreciate your time and best of luck.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you
so much.
Take
All
care.
right. Stay metal.